Vas-y, c'est parti.
10, 9, ignition sequence start.
Hey there, guys. It is Stacy Miller with Remax and Got Spouse Need House. We are here during our podcast from wedding bells to doorbells, and we have the famous Reverend Rob here with us. How are you, Reverend?
Hi, Stacy. I'm great. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm glad you could join us.
Glad to be here.
Of course, I did want to actually start off because I saw that that you had written a book about you. Tell us what that's about, because that's pretty interesting.
It's all in the title. We do wedding vows that work and keep you happily married. A couple of years ago, started noticing a lot of couples wanting to write their own vows. The challenge was I was hearing a lot of the same vows, just in a different way, almost as if some people, I don't know, let's just call them grooms, had just decided, hey, let me just go on the internet and see what I can find, and then just kind of cut and paste. So I wanted to give a little bit more guidance than that. The other thing was a lot of times they would just kind of be like love letters, which is great and fine, but there weren't really anything that they were committing to or saying to do to one another. So
Right.
Just kind of took the traditional wedding vows and deconstructed them a little bit, asked some questions. Kind of spoiler alert, the book can also kind of be used as some relationship coaching or marital advice, because it's asking questions that you don't always ask, and then kind of incorporating those or putting those in the vows. So
That is awesome. I did check it out briefly, and I put it actually in my Amazon cart, I think is where I saw it. I'm not certain, but I did put it in my cart. So I'm going to go back and grab it, especially now that I know that it can be used for more than just vows.
Exactly. Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your background as a wedding reverend, how you got started into doing what you do.
Sure. Well, as I like to say, when I started, I had hair. I started actually in 1985 as a local church minister in the Northeast, in Connecticut, and in two churches that were kind of the picturesque white clapboard church in the center of town. So we had a lot of parishioners who were getting married, but we also had a whole lot of folks from the town who saw it as a beautiful place to get married, and so we would open up the church for that too. So throughout my ministerial career in churches, was always involved in doing weddings, and just loved it. The second wedding I ever did, and like I said, I was very young at the time, was a second marriage for a widow and a widower. They were in their 70s. Back then, we would sit down, and there was always that sort of awkward kind of, am I supposed to have the talk with these people? And
Right.
we sat down, and the older gentleman said, "What do you want to know? Because we know everything there is to know about marriage."
Okay. How'd you handle that?
From that, I just said, okay, yeah, that's that's great. Just I'm going to start taking notes, sir. Thank you.
Right.
I actually did learn a few things from all of that, but anyway, just over the years.
I was going to say, it's fun how you pick up these little things throughout your career that eventually you need, but you pick up and you learn these little lessons throughout your career.
Especially if you pick it up and you think, I don't know when I'm going to need this, but I think I'm going to need this at some point.
Yeah,
And then
file it away.
years later, it's like, oh, that's why I needed that. So yeah.
You started in 85, and how long were you a minister then?
Probably about 30 years. And retired from local church ministry a while back, decided, the thing that I really loved in it all, and there were a number of things that I loved about local church ministry, but the thing I really liked were weddings, and so started talking to venues in the area and got my name out that way, and started going from there. And boy, I was thinking it's probably been about 1,500 or so weddings that I've probably done over my career. Everything from a small little, literally barefoot backyard event to huge church events to mountaintop experiences, just all sorts of stuff. So it's been fun.
What's the coolest, most interesting place that you have officiated a wedding?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it happened just recently. The coolest wedding that I've done was a very artistic one. It was one of the venues here in Phoenix, one of the very high end venues, the Sanctuary. And
beautiful.
They have a beautiful courtyard, and we started out. The ceremony was in the round, so there was a raised platform in the middle of the courtyard. The guests were seated all around, and then at where there were 4 aisles, at the end of the aisles were little stages, and they had ballerinas doing interpretive dance during the prelude. I was afraid they were going to start interpreting my words, and that was going to be really, really weird.
I'm going to be thrown off completely.
Thankfully, they didn't. They just remained nice and quiet and demure. But hundreds of black and white balloons festooning all around. It was the most amazing experience. The bride was very artistic, and it was just that was her thing, and it was.
She had her vision, and she made it happen. That's cool.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I know you are. You're purchasing a house right now. I think in the middle of it. Is that right? So tell me, what is that one thing, because you're going through purchasing a house, what is that one thing that you would want to tell our viewers that are getting married right currently and planning for that home purchase or purchasing a home?
What's yesterday.
That one thing that you recommend?
Start yesterday.
Yes.
The advice I was given years and years and years ago was nothing helps you save like a mortgage. And that is so very true. Whatever, starting out with whatever you can afford, whether that's a single family home, whether that's a condo, whether that's a townhouse. I've known people that started out with, I just know I need to start building equity somehow. I can't afford any of that, but hey, there's this little piece of land and I'm just going to buy that. And not only does real estate almost always appreciate, but you save by building the equity in it.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready, move on to the next one. It's not a forever home until it is.
I've learned exactly what you're saying. I've learned there is no forever home. There really isn't, because life changes. You go left, you go right. Things happen. And exactly what you're saying. I've got 2 boys right now, and one is kind of saving up for his house, but he's also thinking, instead of buying a house for himself, he's thinking buy a triplex or a fourplex. He'll live in one, so it's his primary, and then he'll rent out the other 3 for the income. The other one is he bought at 20 in Flagstaff because he's going to school there, and it's a little sardine shack, but it's his, and I'm a fan of that. Buy any house that you can afford, buy it early, and then that's the best way to build to build generational wealth, to plan for your retirement, even if you're 25, buy any house, keep it 2 years, put a renter in it, and buy the next house, and just keep on washing and repeating.
And after three, you can buy a hotel.
That's right. There
Monopoly
you go.
there really is something to Monopoly.
It teaches us
buy a
so
hotel
much,
or not.
right?
It does. It does.
Back to the wedding part of it. So what's
Mm-hmm.
some advice that you as a reverend can give to your brides and grooms that are wanting to, that's probably it, buy early, but that are wanting to buy a house right after they get married? What's that piece of advice?
Well, and I think that's sort of the first part is, aligning on your values, what you're going to do. I put this nicely. Finances and aligning on your finances isn't necessarily going to assure that you stay happily married. But if your finances are always kind of shaky, kind of, well, not quite sure how we're going to do this from 1 week to the next, it's going to be a source of conflict. And so the more you can smooth that out ahead of time, and again, I think buying a home, even something as simple, even if you're not to that point, how much money do you need to have in your bank account in order for you to feel safe? And then, what do you do to not max out your credit cards and to build up that nest egg that then kind of allows you a lot more options in life.
Right. And if you start as you're engaged, as you're getting married, as you're starting out, if you start that dialogue and that communication, not just about finances, but about everything, it's not good. There's no taboo. There's no, you're on the same page. Even if you disagree with each other, you know what the other one is thinking because you've talked about these things. You've talked about the hard stuff early.
Exactly. One of the things I also encourage couples to do is to set aside every week some us time. And that could be, going out on a date, going for a walk. It could also be just sitting on the patio on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee. But just to share time when these things can come up naturally, and you're not like reacting to something in the heat of the moment, or when one of you has just come home from work and is tired and the other one is cranky, and but to be able to be intentional about that conversation.
I love that. And I love that word. Intentional is the best word ever. If you wake up every day with your intentions, if you go to bed with the intentions for the next day, if you go into your marriage with intentions, that is the way it should be done, right?
Exactly. And anything, whether it's this, the other piece is keep the romance. Be intentional about your romance. I love bringing flowers to my wife for no reason at all. I always like to tell the cashier checking me out, no, I haven't really done anything wrong. I just like to keep her guessing.
What did he do? That's good. I love it.
But yeah, to be intentional about it, rather than, I think the biggest pitfall is taking each other and taking your marriage for granted. And it's such a beautiful thing. It's the love that my wife and I share is the greatest gift I have. And so I always want to try to remember to take care of it as much as I possibly can.
And there's that relationship with your spouse is one that you can easily overlook. You can easily they're always going to be there. So it's really very important, exactly like you said, to make sure that you make time and carve out time, and make sure you check yourself before you come in from a hard day, before you see your spouse. Check yourself and just go, okay, they weren't there all day. They don't know what I've been through. So, I need to be kind. So tell me, couple just gets engaged and they go, we need to, of course, dress, all the fun stuff. When should they contact you or someone like you?
I always try to encourage folks early on in the process. And it's not just because this takes so much work. But there are lots of pieces to getting married. It's like taking on another full-time job. So
Right.
the earlier you start, the better. The more relaxed it's going to be, the more comfortable it's going to be, the more you're able to really make it personal and make it your own. Several months in advance usually is kind of the minimum that I like to have to work with a couple.
Yeah. And when you say work with, I'm sure that includes appointments, right? To talk about the hard stuff, talk about the wedding, of course, why you love this person, but talk about the hard stuff too. So tell me what some of those appointments look like.
Well, so one of my corny dad jokes is weddings are like pizza. And you could say the same thing about relationships. They're like pizza. Everybody knows what one is, but everybody has their own idea of what goes into it. So, to be able to have those conversations, a lot of times it's not really me telling them what to do or what not to do. I love to use the term relationship coaching. It's like, okay, where are you? What are the strengths that you have as a couple? How do you identify those? How do you celebrate those? And then what are the challenges? Where do you need to rely on those strengths to help you overcome the various issues? I probably do about a quarter of the couples that I work with some type of relationship coaching in all of that. And again, a lot of times it'll come up just naturally in talking about the wedding.
Right.
The ceremony itself kind of becomes this image of the relationship, and what is it? How do you want to make this your own? How do you want to personalize it? What are the things that are important to you? How are you going to communicate that? All of those things come out when we sit down and talk about planning a ceremony.
I bet, and I bet it really opens the bride and groom's eyes, or the grooms and groom's eyes, how the other person, their behaviors and what to expect in the future. I'm sure, because if someone is super laid back, and the other person is like this all the time, that's going to come out up front in the coaching that you're doing.
Absolutely. It's something that you get. Having done this as long as I have, it's like you kind of get an eye to okay, what's going on. You're right. Is one the very dominant, and one just could care less?
Yeah.
How do you help them recognize that and say, okay, yeah, maybe I need to be a little bit more intentional, and maybe part of my aggressiveness, if you will, is to say, what do you want, and to try to encourage them to participate more.
Yeah, to get on the same page and come together a little bit. It's true in real estate too. There's that meeting of the minds. I usually always sit across the table at some point in time, very early on, with the buyer or the buyers, and there's a lot of give and take and yin and yang. And one of the questions I ask is, what are your must-haves? And by must-have, I mean not it would be nice to have a gas stove. I mean, this is a deal breaker. I'm willing to walk away. And they each may have two different ideas, but it's that finding that middle ground of, somebody's going to have to concede somewhere. So let's figure out if this is truly a must have, or if this is it'd be nice to have a 8-car garage, maybe it's not necessary, but it'd be nice.
Yeah, Stacy, obviously I've never worked with you as a real estate agent, but years ago I worked with an agent, and she was the first one. And I remember kind of taking a step back and looking at this and saying, she's not just asking me about square footage or numbers of bedrooms or bathrooms. She's actually doing a little bit of a deeper dive into sort of the psychology. Are we extroverts? Do we like to have everybody over for weekends and the big game and that?
Yeah.
Or are we more the introverted folks for whom our house is that fortress of solitude where we can
Solitude,
come home
right?
and recharge. And being able to know that as an agent, it was amazing how she was able to find, again, it wasn't our forever home,
Right.
but the home that just, God, it just spoke to us. It
Spoke
was
to
just,
both of you, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do have those clients that don't see the value up front of meeting together and sitting around a table and having coffee or wine and discussing the deep dive, like you said. But then after they have the deep dive, they get it. They get it
Yes.
completely. So, yeah, it's interesting. Well, tell me, what's the most? So we already talked about the most memorable. I would like to know, what is the wedding that you saw going south really fast, as far as issues, not the bride and groom, but as far as outside issues during the wedding, and how did you resolve that? Because I just can't imagine when it's a chaos coordinator, right? You're trying to control the uncontrollable. So how did you handle something like that?
You only get one shot. You're right. So, but my favorite, and I do tell this one. I don't tell a lot of sort of wedding horror stories, because it's like, especially when I'm working with a couple, I don't want to, they've got enough stress. They don't need to know about the time that, it started raining and we were outside, and, I had my notebook in front of me, and the best man and the maid of honor had to put their hands on the paper to keep it from blowing away. And if you don't know, computer inkjet runs, and so it was starting to run, and it was like, no, the story, this is the story I'll tell you. We got to the very end, and I said, and now, by the power vested in me, and the bride all of a sudden said, wait, stop. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the wedding that I've always dreaded.
And I'm retiring.
She turned to her maid of honor and said, quick, give me a tissue. So her maid of honor gave her a tissue, and she very aggressively blew her nose. And she looked at her groom and said, I didn't want to kiss you all snotty.
And I'm sure you were like, oh, thank God.
I was like, and I mean, all the guests, everybody was like, ah.
I really, that's awesome. I can only imagine looking around with the faces of, you, but also what the faces of the audience was like. I bet everyone was holding their breath.
Oh, it was like a movie. I mean, because I'm looking at mom and dad in there, and like, well, I knew she wasn't any.
Yeah. I knew it.
I knew it. But no, it was great. It was great.
Well, it was so great having you on the show. I cannot wait to see you again. Hopefully you can come and join us again sometime. But yeah, this was fun.
Oh,
and
absolutely. I loved it.
A million more things we need to talk about, don't we?
I've got 1,499 other.
Is that how many weddings you've officiated since you've been?
Probably about 1,500. I think, really, when it's all said and done. And like I said, and this always kind of comes across. I don't mean it in any kind of oh, look at me, aren't I great? I've gotten to the point in my life where I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work, and I get to stand there with couples at their mountaintops or one of their mountaintop experiences, and to help them, express that in a way for their family, for their friends, and most importantly for each other, that hopefully is that meaningful bond that keeps them together.
Starts that marriage off the right way. That is amazing.
Absolutely.
And I look at real estate the same way. I feel like, I am lucky enough, I'm blessed enough to be able to stand side by side with my clients, whether they're buying, selling, investing, whatever the case, renting even. I get to stand side by side. I get chosen to be with them on And this is one of those mountaintops. You know, you think wedding, you think buying a house, buying your first house, especially, and kids. Those are three big mountaintops that, and I'm sure you're probably like me. I'm honored to be invited back and go to the weddings. I'm honored to be invited to the baby shower down the road. And I mean, that stuff is what keeps us going. And I get to be a realtor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, good. It was great talking to you. I hope we do cross paths again. I'm definitely ordering that book. What is the name of the book?
We Do Wedding Vows That Work and Keep You Happily Married.
There you go. So you heard it here. Reverend Rob is awesome at what he does. We're going to link all of your information and everything to the video so that people can contact you. And I hope that the next time you're in Peoria that you reach out and we can go grab coffee.
I would love that. That would be great, Stacy. Thanks again for all of this.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and have a great day.
You too.
Bye, guys.